Welcome back, everyone. Listen to another episode of the Rebel Talk presented by the Rebel Walk. I'm Cam Wicker, and as always, I'm here with.
Zach Moreth.
We're here to talk a little bit about the upcoming game against Oklahoma this weekend for Ole Miss. A game that really had some potential to be a big game coming into the season. Oklahoma was looking to be a pretty top premier program again coming into the SEC for their first year. I believe they were ranked about 18th, somewhere around there to start the year. Obviously, things hasn't worked too well for Oklahoma on the offensive end to start the year. Ole Miss has kind of had some mishaps early in the season as well. So it's not as big as a game as it was played out to be, but it's a big game for Ole Miss to kind of get bounced back on the right track, and it's a game for Oklahoma if to kind of just say that you're not giving up after last week, and then after losing your offensive coordinator, changing quarterbacks again. So it's going to be an interesting matchup this week for Ole Miss and Oklahoma. Ole Miss opened up this game as a 21-point favorite. The line's at 20.5 now. Over under, I believe, set about 48. Seems right. Past couple weeks in SEC play, teams really just haven't been scoring a lot on the offensive end, just really all around the board. I mean, you see teams like Texas, Tennessee, and Georgia kind of putting up some 40, 30-point games there, but you don't really see a lot of SEC teams right now, especially SEC on SEC matchups where the score is getting really out of hand. We'll jump into the injury report. Right off the bat, yesterday, Trey Harris was not on the initial injury report. They come out a couple minutes later, put Trey Harris on the injury report as questionable. Just what's your initial thoughts on that report, Zach, and just that Trey Harris situation?
Yeah, it angered me a little bit, Cam. You know, as a reporter, you want to try and get the most accurate information out. And I felt like the guy. You know, I saw the injury report. I was like, I'm going to be the one to make the tweet. Trey Harris, not even listed. You know, no questions asked. He's playing. I checked my Twitter feed, and I'm getting people my replies. What are you talking about? Trey's playing. He's on the report. I'm like, oh, my God. So we had to go back, you know, a little mishap, but we fixed it. And I'm not sure why he wasn't included, right? I mean, this is your best player we're talking about, a guy who has gotten injured several times throughout the year. We saw it with a potential groin, maybe a hip, a lot of lower body stuff going on with him, and you leave him off. I think Trey's going to play. I don't think you can miss the best player on your injury report like that in the fashion that they did it. Now, I know he got moved to questionable. Lane's been doing this all year long with the whole questionable. And then before the game, it's a game time decision. And then the guy usually ends up playing. So based off that, I want to say Trey's playing, but definitely a really confusing situation nonetheless. And I do apologize to the fans because it had me excited as well. Then they went back and added him, but we'll see come game time. I don't think we're going to get an official announcement if he's playing or not until the ball snaps, per usual.
Absolutely, and we're recording this podcast before the other injury report comes out tonight, the updated one that they do on Thursday nights. So we don't know what that'll look like tonight. Probably won't be much change for both teams. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of guys on both teams' injury reports that there's like a lot of question there. Other than really Trey Harris. I noticed on the Ole Miss injury report as well, though, Jaden Williams was listed as questionable earlier this week. Lane Kiffin announced that Jaden Williams, he expects him to play at some point this season again. Like, no doubt that he expects him to play at one point this season again. Could that be this weekend? We're yet to see. Haven't really heard much about him being questionable. I guess we'll have to see on Saturday if he goes out there and warms up over the past couple of weeks. Jeremy James, Caleb Warren seemed like they were working their way into warm-ups on the field and then working their way into games. Haven't seen Jeremy James yet. He's questionable on this list as well. Likely going to see him back this week, considering all the talk between Kiffin and Reese McIntyre at the podium saying that linemen are going to be returning back this week. Expect to see Jaquan Scott back in that rotation. Caleb Warren getting some rotation, probably at center and guard as well. It seemed like the Washington transfers, Bulow and Kalepo, have kind of been getting banged up a little bit game by game. Not too much to the fact where they've been making it on this list, but at least to the fact where it's noticeable that they're getting a little banged up. So there's going to probably be some rotation up front for the Rebels. Other guys on this list, Princely Omamielin is listed as probable. He played in the LSU game, kind of limited in that LSU game. Didn't see a lot of them, especially late in that game. TJ Daugherty listed as probable. He's on this list probably every other week. It seems like he's always going to play, though. And then Caden Lee is listed as probable. we'll likely see Caden Lee out there as the number 2 receiver for the Rebels. Jordan Watkins just had a kid this week as well, so don't know where the status is on there, but I'm expecting him probably to be on the field as well. And then Matt Jones didn't play against LSU, listed as doubtful again for this game against OU. So it's going to be interesting to see what Ole Miss will do with the running back situation again heading into Saturday. Going into the Oklahoma report, though, same as it's kind of usually been for Oklahoma. 4 receivers out. Deion Burks also listed on here as questionable. They're pretty low on the offensive end when it comes to playmakers. They're Oklahoma's. We'll get more into this, but they're dead last in the SEC in rushing offense. Don't run for a lot of touchdowns. Obviously, the offense hasn't really been doing that well in total for them, but having this amount of receivers out for Oklahoma seems to be a big issue. Not much else there to talk about for Oklahoma other than Kendall Dolby is also out. He's a rotational DB. But I think the big thing here is that Deion Burks, leading receiver, he's been out a couple games. He still leads the team in receiving with 201 touchdowns, and he's questionable. I will probably guess that he'll play considering he's the leading receiver on this team, and Jackson Arnold will be back out there as well. So we get to see what happened with Deion Burks.
Yeah, with Jackson Arnold on the field, this is a player who has to play in order for this offense to really do anything. Deion Burks, he's a smaller slot guy. I believe he's around 5'10" in terms of height, but he's averaging around 7.7 yards per catch. Gets a lot of receptions too, 6, 7, 8 receptions a game. He hasn't played in a month since they played Tennessee in September, I believe that game was. So it'll be interesting, but you can imagine that they're going to get the ball into his hands because essentially, like Cam was saying, Oklahoma has no rushing attack. And in addition to that, even if they did have a good rushing attack, the Ole Miss defensive line and their front seven, they're going to prevent that at all costs, and you're going to be looking at about 2 to 3 yards per carry, which isn't going to be effective, especially on the road. So expect Jackson Arnold to be trying to throw the ball all over the yard. I do believe the Ole Miss secondary is probably the weakest spot of their defense, despite the secondary having done a pretty decent job, especially against LSU, who has some really good playmakers. So that's going to be exciting. I think it's a chance for the secondary to step up, get a couple interceptions, get some turnovers, and really put some pressure on an Oklahoma offense that has looked god-awful. And just staying on this topic, their offensive line is one of the worst in the country. The amount of pressures and sacks that they've allowed is almost unbelievable. And I think Walter Nolan, Umar Mielen, who I expect to play, Pegues, Jared Ivey, Daughtery, Pupal, all these guys, I think they're going to have a field day, and it's going to be much needed. I think they're going to provide the energy, even going on into the offense, which hopefully can start moving a little bit. But I expect a huge game from Pete Golding in this defense.
Absolutely. And before the season, it was kind of like we said, this game was a little bit hyped up. So now we're moving into the previews of this game. We'll talk a little bit about this tweet that Jackson Dart and Billy Bowman Jr. of Oklahoma kind of exchanged back in, I believe it was July. It was June.
Yeah.
June. This tweet says it was a video or a picture that Bowman was commenting on of Dart's on the deep ball, I believe, that Dart was working on in the offseason. And he was like, Billy Bowman posted pick 6, and it was like emoji with his hand over his face. And Jackson Dart was like responded with it. Yeah, okay, buddy, we're gonna see. So we'll see if that's kind of a little bit going at each other this weekend. If that same energy is going to be brought from 4 months ago to now. But kind of just going off of that, I feel like this is a game. If you're Jackson Dart, it's time to make a statement. It's time to show that game against LSU didn't affect you as much as the media thinks it affects you, because the narrative on Jackson Dart really after that LSU game is he looked defeated. He was looking down at the podium. He wasn't really making eye contact with any of the reporters, and most people think he looked defeated on the season. All throughout the week with Ole Miss reporting and Ole Miss media getting at players and coaches being asked questions. A lot of the questions being asked were about Jackson Dart and how he responded this week on leadership. Mostly the same answers, but the one that I like that I'm highlighting here is Pupal said that he really liked the way that Jackson Dart has become a vocal leader over this past week and the way that he's responded. He was the only one that really kind of said anything different other than, Jackson's doing okay. So really moving into this week, I think it's time for a quarterback like Jackson Dart to make a statement because, obviously Heisman's in the back of your mind right now. You don't want to think about that, but this is a chance where you can prove that you're one of the elite quarterbacks in the SEC, one of the elite quarterbacks in the country, and bounce your team back from a couple of hard losses when there's still a lot left to play for.
Cam, It's very interesting to me because you're going against a really solid Oklahoma defense, which we'll break down in a second. But Jackson Dart doesn't play well against Kentucky. Elite defense, right? They got NFL playmakers all over the field for them. Same kind of deal with South Carolina. Some electric edge rushers. Secondary, not the greatest, but still, a physical, capable defense. And Dart looked a little better. And granted, that game was on the road, so he takes a little step there, And then going to LSU, it's all this hype about this is the worst pass defense in the SEC. They're not as physical as Kentucky or South Carolina. And Dart doesn't seem to throw the ball as well as he did, even against South Carolina. I know there was a couple drops and some weird play calls. And again, the offensive line looked horrendous. So now you're going against an Oklahoma defense that has proven to be pretty solid in the secondary, has an elite front. What's the response going to be like from this offense? So that's my main question going into this game. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, Cam. Just wanted to say there hasn't really been a pattern as to how Jackson Dart has played and performed. So this is like you said, man, this is a week to come out and prove that you can compete against a really good defense.
Absolutely. It's a week where both quarterbacks, Jackson Dart and Jackson Arnold, I feel like both of them have something they can prove this week, and we'll see which one comes out victorious on Saturday. Going into just the previews of this game and our keys to the game. To start this off, I wanted to say I've been leading you guys astray all week saying that this was the first matchup between Oklahoma and Ole Miss. It's not. It'll be the second matchup. It'll be the first ever regular season matchup. Obviously, more regular season matchups to come between the Rebels and Oklahoma down the road in all sports with Oklahoma entering the SEC. But this will be the first regular season matchup in football. They met for the first time in the 1999 Independence Bowl. The Ole Miss Rebels won 27-25 on a last-second field goal. Oklahoma took the lead 24-25 late in that game, led by Josh Heupel, the Tennessee head coach now, who was the quarterback at Oklahoma at the time. Just thought that was a little fun fact there. Ole Miss ended up getting the ball on the last drive of the game, driving down, kicking the game-winning field goal as time expired in that game. And that was kind of, like I told Zach, that was kind of, I guess, where Ole Miss kind of went on the rise from the 90s. Not really great in the 90s and the 80s, and then kind of in the David Cutcliffe era before Eli Manning came to town. This is kind of where Ole Miss kind of became a team that was competing against some of the bigger programs in the SEC. Moving on to a little bit in the game, my keys to the game here. Number one is protect Jackson Dart. Like we've said, over the past couple of weeks, he's just been running for his life out there. And this is no disrespect to the offensive line, but you have to find a way to make a team like Oklahoma be desperate out there. I guess this is a team that is going to be really good on the defensive end of the ball, but they're going to be searching for points on offense, especially against a really tough Ole Miss defense. And this is a game where you have to just kind of take the air out of the Oklahoma defense. Also find the checkdowns early and often. This is kind of where you want to just take away anything that the Oklahoma defense thinks they have going for them, and that's getting after the quarterback. They have 25 sacks on the year. They hurried the quarterback over 70 times. So they're going to be getting after Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart's been hurried 70 times this year. He's been sacked 16 times this year. So this is going to be a game where if you're Ole Miss, if you're the Ole Miss offense, I'd like to see you find those check down routes. Even in the past, I know people don't like this play with the swing routes to the running back. We haven't seen that this year. We haven't seen the swings to the running backs. We haven't seen any type of screen type of plays other than to receivers on the quick now routes to Caden Lee and to Trey Harris. We haven't really seen a lot of those get the ball out quick and let your receivers do the work. And this is a team that I feel like you got a lot of guys who can make people miss between Jordan Watkins, Juice Wells, Trey Harris, the running backs on this team. And then obviously if you get the ball to Caden Prescorn, he's hard to tackle. It's going to take a couple of guys to bring down a guy that big, especially if you're not going going straight at his knees or anything like that. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball. Well, another thing on the offense I wanted to say, finishing in the red zone has seemed to be a problem for this Ole Miss offense, especially in SEC play. You get down in the 10-yard line, and obviously I know that the way this offense is kind of spread out, it seems like at times you don't know what to do down there other than give it to J.J. Pegues. But if that's the only thing you can do, give it to J.J. Pegues. Let him score 10 touchdowns this year. But if you have to find a way to finish in the red zone and it's J.J. Pegues, then do it. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, like I talked about earlier, this is a Oklahoma offense that's been struggling a lot. They have been struggling to block. They have been struggling to get anything on the passing game or the run game. Most notably, they have allowed 105 total pressures between the two quarterbacks this year. That's second in the SEC behind Taylor Green. We know Taylor Green's a rushing quarterback, so obviously he holds onto the ball a little bit more, so it's kind of understandable. He gets pressured a lot. And then 28 sacks this Oklahoma offensive line has allowed, which that is the most in the SEC. So this is a chance for the Ole Miss defense to get after Jackson Arnold, make him uncomfortable to start this game. He hasn't started a game since Tennessee a couple weeks ago when Deion Burks initially went down. So this will be his first game back since coming back in that game last week against South Carolina as well. Only played 4 games this year, too. Arnold has. He's been sacked 16 times. That's the same amount as Jackson Dart. That's an issue for Oklahoma, and I believe that Arnold will be likely be running around again against this against this defensive line for Ole Miss this week. And then last thing I got, the rushing attack for the Oklahoma offense. 785 yards on the year. They're only averaging 3 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns. That's dead last in the SEC with Auburn. The Rebels have only given up 1 rushing touchdown this year, and they're allowing under 2 yards a carry right now. So if there's anything to highlight that's going really, really well for this Ole Miss team right now, is that Pete Golden is just smothering anybody who tries to run the football. This defensive line is smothering anyone who touches the football. That's not the quarterback really, and this is going to be a offense that's much like the Kentucky offense, just not the ability to run the ball. So this is the game I feel like the Rebel defense should completely shut down this Oklahoma offense.
I would hope so, Cam. And just backing off of what you said, it's going to be crucial for the defense to make Jackson Arnold as uncomfortable as possible. He's been uncomfortable the entire year. Really, really bad offensive line, like we talked about. But you have to finish these plays at the same time. We saw a lot of times against LSU, we're playing a two-man coverage, so you got the safeties back and corners playing man-to-man. It's going to be simple if Ole Miss doesn't have some sort of spy for Oklahoma to just run out their receivers and have Jackson Arnold scramble up the middle for probably 10 to 15 yards. So you got to make sure when you do get pressure, you have to finish. I think the only way Oklahoma actually gains positive yardage is by extending plays and letting Arnold move around the pocket and using his legs to make plays, because I don't see much of any sort of offense out of them, especially against a really good defense in Ole Miss. And again, another key from me is protecting Dart. Like Cam said, Jackson Dart is in his prime when he has time to throw the ball. He hasn't looked the same as last year in terms of maneuvering the pocket and avoiding pressure, so you got to keep him protected and give him time to make these throws to your guys like Trey Harris, Juice Wells, and the playmakers of this team. I'd love to see the ball in the hands of Caden Prieskorn. We've been begging for it all year long. I don't know why it hasn't happened, but hopefully that's something that changes. I think Prieskorn can propel this offense and continue to get those gains on 3rd down, maybe 4th down when you need him. But just establishing that there's a tight end in this offense and he has the potential to go to the NFL. I think that needs to be said over and over and over again, and hopefully we see it on the field. Also, another key, this is a fun one. No one should get the ball other than number 89 when it's 4th and 1. For the love of God, send the big boy out there and let's go. I'm not sure if the fans heard this, but Jared Ivey told us in his press conference that out of every time JJ Pegues has ran the ball in spring and fall practice, which is probably hundreds of times that they practice this, Ivey and TJ Daugherty are the only 2 players who've ever stopped Pegues. 2 really good future NFL guys, and they're the only 2 to have ever stopped him. So get 89 out there, snap him the ball, and let's go, right? I mean, let's not mess around there. Get the conversion. Oklahoma doesn't have a good 4th down defense, so let's move the chains a little bit and keep this offense in rhythm. And the last thing is the run game. If you guys remember in 2022, Jonathan Mingo and Malik Heath, great players, but they're not those elite wide receivers that you can count on every time to get the pass game moving. And there were games where they weren't really showing up. So what'd you do? You give the ball to Quinshon Judkins and let him decimate the defenses. Obviously, it's 2024. We don't have Quinshon Judkins, but Lane Kiffin's ability to get creative in the run game and to find ways to get the run game moving, to pick up 4 yards here, 5 yards there, and keep the defense guessing so that when you go into play action, you have a man open and you can create space for these wide receivers down the field. I think that's going to be key, and it's really going to propel this Ole Miss offense to hopefully live up to its potential. But the final score, I got Ole Miss winning 20-7. Definitely going to hit the under. I think that's almost a guarantee. two really good defenses going at it, two really mediocre offenses for the most part. And I'm curious to see who's going to come out on top. I think Ole Miss is going to handle business. I think man-to-man, they're a better team. I think they're better coached right now. And obviously the game's going to be played in Vaught Hemingway Stadium. It's going to be a beautiful day in the Grove. I hope to see you all there, and I'm excited to hopefully watch Ole Miss football get back on track.
Absolutely. And I wanted to add a couple more things before I throw my prediction too, just to end to offer your words there. With the tight end situation, you have Daquan Wright as well, who hasn't played a lot this year other than really blocking situations. If I'm Daquan Wright, I'm sitting back and I'm looking at my playing time this year, and I'm looking at my involvement in an offense and thinking about my future going into the NFL as a draftable tight end. And obviously Caden Prieskorn, no more eligibility after this. If you want to kind of just keep a guy like Daquan Wright around, you have to show something that you're going to get Prieskorn the ball, that you're going to get him the ball at some point, that you're going to work a tight end of this offense. And obviously I'm not the coach. I don't know what goes on in the huddles or in that headset. But it seems like at times that you have to start making decisions on if you're going to keep guys around. Because some guys in this era of college football, guys will enter the portal mid-season. They'll redshirt themselves mid-season and enter the portal. Obviously, Daquan Wright's probably played more than 4 games by now. But this is a situation where you have to remember that guys don't have to stick around if they don't want to anymore. And then on the running back situation, I would like to see Ulysses Bentley start this game, especially after the LSU game that he had. I would like to see Bentley get 12 plus carries, 15 carries in this game. That doesn't mean forget about Henry Parrish. Henry Parrish has been great this year. He's been really good in certain situations. Get him the ball too, but you have to find a way to make sure that you have 2 running backs probably getting 10 plus carries this game. And I think if you start Bentley, that just shows that you're moving in that direction of making sure that this team has the best guys on the field at all times.
Going into my prediction, start the game, Ken. He's got to start the game.
Absolutely. Has to. Going into my prediction, I just sent it to TJ. Actually, shout out to TJ. 31-13 is my prediction. Ole Miss with the win. My bold prediction was Bentley rushing for 100 yards and 2 total touchdowns. So we'll see how he gets those, if he gets those. But I think this will be a very defensive-minded game to start the game. We'll have to see how this Ole Miss offense responds after kind of just really sluggish weeks in SEC play ever since SEC play has started. So we'll have to see how this Ole Miss offense bounces back against a struggling Oklahoma team right now. That game will be at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Ole Miss is 20-point favorite right now. Like Zach said, it'll be a beautiful day in the Grove. First game in the Vaught in about a month now, so a lot of fans be out there. Should be a record-setting crowd probably in the Grove, probably in the stadium as well. We'll have to see how that goes. But I think that's all we got for you guys for football. To end it here, I'll talk a little bit about what's coming up for the rest of the sports over the next couple weeks. Ole Miss basketball will play Illinois in an exhibition game before their season starts. They'll play that Sunday at 11 a.m. Pardon the Sip was, I believe, last night, the night before. A lot of students showed out for that. Seems like the students are really hyped up for basketball season with it being right around the corner. Women's basketball will play their exhibition game the next day on Monday at 6:30 p.m. against Christian Brothers. And then Ole Miss will hit the road next week against Fayetteville. I believe that's in like a double slot right now, probably a noonish start for that game against Arkansas. And that'll be a tough one, as Arkansas has kind of been a team that's been very not kind to Ole Miss's hopes of making the playoffs in the past in previous years. But I think that's all we got for you guys. That's all you got, Zach?
I got one last little thing, Cam.
Yep,
I got a question for you.
What's up?
We saw Jackson Dart. I think he was wearing like a Gucci sweatshirt through the Walk of Champions last time Ole Miss played at home. And for those that are on Twitter, the backlash was insane. I'm talking words that shouldn't be said, just crazy language. Do you think Dart wears a suit to the Walk of Champions, Cam?
I'm not sure. I think
he does.
maybe if Dart wears a suit, maybe everybody else wears a suit. This is a thing. If any of you guys don't know, Ole Miss in the past has always had coaches that seem to make the players wear suits coming out for the games. I believe when Hugh Freeze was here, he really didn't care that much about it. He would let the guys wear sweats sometimes too. But Matt Luke was really just set on that, making sure guys were wearing those suits on game days. Obviously, we know Kiffin's more of a fashion guy. He likes to wear his suits, but he lets the guys do what they want as well. Dart doing the fashion trends pretty much every week. I've also heard from Ole Miss Burner all over Twitter that Dart maybe shaved his head So I know people were wanting to see that too. The Dart get rid of the hair, put a suit on, and go through the Walk of Champions. Yet to see if that's happened. But I really do feel like that Dart. This is a chance for him to lock in and get things right this season. Glad to hear what Chris Paul said about him in the press conferences of being a vocal leader, and we'll have to see how Dart bounces back. But I think that's all I got.
Yeah, man. I just, I'm curious. I'm going to be tweeting about it. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, we got to get back on track, and hopefully we get a win on Saturday.
Absolutely. Make sure to tune in to that game this weekend. Like I said, 11 a.m. kickoff against Oklahoma. And I believe that's all we got for you guys this week. We'll be back next week to recap the Oklahoma game, recap a little bit of basketball, and talk more about moving into Arkansas. But that's all we got for you guys this week. Make sure to tune into the rebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports news.